Why did you start a podcast?
I haven't even announced this yet on Twitter. I'm finding the right moment for this. It's not been the right moment yet. I've shared it with some people and I shared it on the space when I returned. So the LaBosco podcast would have the first kind of story behind this.
What would some suggestions be to beginners wanting to grow a personal brand on Twitter? Their goal is monetization.
It's pretty simple. There's just a couple of things you need, really. But if you're a beginner, cold DMs are not easy because you don't have any authority to go over. So the only way that might work out is...
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the LaBosco podcast. Today I've got Aidan on. He's grown to 4,000 followers on Twitter and has his own podcast called the Story Vault Podcast, which has had some big guests on, such as Virgil Brew, Taylor Simmons, Dan West, and more. I'm super honored to have him on. How are you today?
Great to see you, Christian. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, man, I've been seeing you do some cool stuff on Twitter as you've been taking off, doing some really cool podcasts. So yeah, I'm stoked to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So for those who don't know you, could you give a little background on how you got into the creator economy and your story before that?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, actually. Funny story, how I kind of got in. So when I left, I think it would have been like school for you, like when you're 18. Before I decided to go to university, I never went in the end, but my plan was before going to university, I wanted to, do something different, open my mind to the world, travel, see the world differently, open up my worldview, expand my thinking. So I ended up traveling to the States, actually. So born and raised in the UK, but moved to California for a couple of years, and that was super cool. Great experience. And then I was actually ended up in Texas. I was doing some cool stuff in Texas, like helping out, working with this nonprofit organization. It was really cool. Then COVID hit, and like it became very complicated with my visas and stuff, and ended up coming back home to the UK. When I was in America, I met my fiance, she's my fiance now, my girlfriend at the time, and she's from Germany originally. So when I came back to the UK, she'd come back also to Germany. So we knew, we wanted to plan a future together, to get married eventually and to move to Germany. So when I get back home, I was, thinking, dang, like, what am I going to do now? My life's kind of abruptly moved, and I'm back here. And I started to explore the idea of kind of, okay, do I want to go down this university path? Do I want to get a job? Well, first of all, I'm not sure if my options are interesting, because if I wanted to move to Germany, I've already got a different path I need to follow. I need to see if I can somehow move there and get a job there or kind of study there. Or better, I started to entertain this idea of, I wonder if I can build a business. I wonder if I can make money online. I wonder if I can travel and do something I love that I can do while I'm working remotely. And so I ended up working. I did the classic thing: go on Google, type what is the high income skill that's in demand. I found SEO, and so I went with that. I was working at a coffee shop at the time, and just picked up SEO, ran with it. Ended up getting a really cool job, an awesome agency here in Birmingham, and I was overseeing a bunch of SEO stuff. And then it was really great, but I knew in my heart, okay, this is, first of all, I didn't love SEO. I quickly realized, okay, I don't love it. It's really cool. It's really powerful, a great skill, and I had some great experiences, but it wasn't for me. So I started to think, okay, I really need to see if I can do something that will allow me to travel and work remotely, that I can move to Germany. And so we'll probably come across this, but I actually came across, first of all, they're probably the people who've inspired me the most to even start online. They're called Ken and Mary at the Humble Penny. So they're a YouTube channel that are dedicated to personal finance. So I learned all my stuff from them to begin with. And from there, I ended up deciding, I'm going to start a blog. So I was going to just start a personal finance blog. And so I thought, okay, how am I going to get traffic to this blog? And I was like, well, I don't want to go on Instagram. All my friends are there. Everyone knows me there. So I wanted to hide from everyone, and decided to come to Twitter. And I actually started off as an anonymous personal finance account that had an Anon profile that was tweeting about my blog. And then I discovered the creator economy. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Wow. It's amazing the sort of the path that you took, so many different things and different things you try before getting to this eventual place. I think it's funny. I feel like I know a couple people have come to Twitter because they didn't want to go on Instagram or the other social media platforms because everyone knew them there.
Yeah, so true.
So you just came to X like sort of organically, not from Danco or any people like
So
that.
it was, yeah. So it was a bit of both. So I'd started this finance blog. I was thinking, okay, what can I do? How can I get some traffic to this blog? I know SEO. So that was the plan. Blow up my own blog with SEO and monetize it somehow. Thank God I didn't follow through with that. But yeah, so I decided, Instagram, I don't know, reels and posts. I just don't want to do that. So then I thought, maybe Twitter could be cool. But I didn't, Twitter, isn't that just for like memes, politics, like soccer? So then I did actually come to YouTube. I did come across Danco, and that obviously inspired the move to Twitter because I realized, oh dang, this is his philosophy. I really resonate with that. And then as I started posting on Twitter, I just started seeing other creators starting posting around their personal brand that they're building, how they're making money, how they're building businesses, doing something they love, a one person business, the whole philosophy. And that was like, yeah, I jumped in. So I'd say it was a mixture of those personal finance guys at the humble penny, and then yeah, Danco definitely.
What was your experience like when you first started writing on Twitter for those first couple months?
Yeah, man, it's a funny question. You know what? Looking back, this is like, a year and a bit now. I just decided like I am going to make this work. I don't know how, but this is going to work out. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but this whole Twitter thing, I moved away from the blog eventually and I just went all in on building a personal brand. But I just decided I'm going to figure this out. So I literally just, honestly, I'll just be honest, I spent so much time just learning. Like I joined a Danco's Modern Mastery right at the beginning. And I was learning just generally, okay, how to tweet, how to grab attention, how does this game work with, getting traffic, commenting, networking. And I really love writing. I've always loved writing. I kind of, left it at school because I thought, you know what, it's not really going to do anything for me till I kind of came here. And yeah, man, like I loved it. I actually loved the process of learning how to write. Tweets, threads were big at the time. Long forms hadn't have come out by then. And so it was a super fun process, honestly, just learning. And I just went to town. I went to town tweeting. I went to town commenting on people, meeting people. And I went to town just honestly connecting with people, DMing and networking, because I realized, okay, if I want to do something here, I'm going to have to, build a network, make some friends. And you know what? That was kind of the funnest part, to be honest. As I started to meet more people, I realized, man, there's so many people here who are building stuff. And that was definitely a game changer.
Yeah, that's a reason why I stayed at Twitter was because of the community aspect. Like I tried or I researched dropshipping and all these other things and even YouTube, but there's not as much of a community aspect because you're not able to just DM people and reach out to them like you are on
Mm.
Twitter.
So true. Yeah, you'd be surprised, man. Like, I was so surprised when I started reaching out to people and the people who are on there. Like, obviously, from a mindset point of view, people who are very dedicated to achieving their goals, kind of discovering this, this lifestyle of freedom. Very philosophical, thinking about these deep questions in life. Then also the people who are on there, incredible business owners, incredible experts and professionals who are using the platform you can network with, and I just think that's still profound to this day that if you know how to be someone who knows how to connect well, who knows how to send a good message, a good DM, cut through all the cold DM BS that we see on X. If you know how to do that, you can change your life because the people you can meet there can unlock opportunities for you, referrals for you. You become friends, their knowledge becomes yours. There's so many possibilities. And I can hands down say if that's probably one of the biggest takeaways from my time on X, it'd be that the network I built has probably done the most for me than anything else.
Yeah, it's sort of like a hidden gem. It's like the last place you'd expect to be able to get these connections, this political and divisive Twitter.
Yeah. You're right, man.
Um, who are the people that you look up to the most in the creator economy currently? And maybe the people you looked up to when you first started as well?
Hmm. So it definitely will be those guys. They're called Ken and Mary at the Humble Penny. So they're probably not in the same lane of the creator economy that we are. but they, had built a YouTube channel. They had grown quite a big following on Instagram, and they were selling, like a cohort, like a membership. I was actually part of it. It's like a membership, Financial Joy Academy. It was called. Um, it was like a monthly membership and like a community, and they had loads, and they sell digital products. So I really liked them because that was the first time I'd really opened my eyes to personal finance, investing, how to build a side hustle, how to manage my money, how to manage debt, all these things. Um, good debt, bad debt, just property, so many things. And so they really inspired me because it was the first time I started to invest into myself, started to build some skills, see what was possible. So I would say, yeah, that those guys were massive. And then I guess when it comes to the creator economy, there's so many people. I think, of course, I know Danco has bought so many people here. Like it's insane, to be honest. Like everyone you talk to, Danco has bought over, but you've got to give it to the guy. Like the guy, some people I've noticed now kind of hate on him a bit. Like he brought people onto X and they're beginners and they're spending all this time building a brand when they should be getting some skills or clients first. There's so many ways you can do this game. There's not a right or wrong answer. What I do really really like about Danko is that he's really nailed his philosophy. Like it's a very powerful philosophy that he's obviously crafted over a long period of time, and it's very relatable. It's very relatable, this idea of working on something you love, finding your purpose, one person business. Like I don't know about you, but I don't want to build like a $10 million startup with 50 employees. Like I really don't. I just want to use business as a vehicle to benefit my lifestyle and my goals. And so definitely Danco. And then I think as I've come onto the platform over the last year, there's so many cool people. I'd say it's really cool. I've had the privilege of getting to know him a bit more recently. Dakota Robertson. Obviously, I know you've had him on the pod. Um, he's a great guy. I think he was probably my biggest inspiration starting out because the way he was posting content, how he had built authority, but at the same time, his humor and like his really funny takes, the way he kind of crafted all of this had built what I'd call like a magnetic brand. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I don't know how you've done that, but that's incredible. So I'd say him. And then more recently, and funnily enough, I know, please forgive me, because I know this is like the godfather of the creator economy technically, but only recently, like the last couple of months, have I really started delving into Naval. So I already known about Naval, but for some reason hadn't delved in. But I've recently been diving in, and yeah, I think the guy's just awesome. So shout out Naval if you ever listen to this.
Yeah, he's amazing. All you can see his ideas and concepts trickle down to basically almost everything in the creator economy.
Mm. Yeah, it's really interesting. I'd love to eventually chat to him somehow and see his opinion on how he sees his own role in this development of this space. It'd be really interesting.
Yeah, that'd be amazing to get him on a podcast. I know he's only been on, I think, Tim Ferriss and Joe Rogan, so those are some pretty big names.
We got away. We got a way to go. Hey.
Yeah. What do you think sets you apart from other creators on X as a personal brand?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's really interesting, Christian. I think you probably hadn't have started. But remind me when you started on X. Like you started kind of really going for it.
Yeah, I think January 20th.
Okay, January this year. So I'd kind of just taken a break around then and came back more recently, the last couple of months. But so I've changed my approach a bit now, but I have to share how I kind of began because that really helped kickstart some of the people I've met, some of the growth I had, the opportunities I had, and even some of the business that I do now. Most of it is stemmed from this. So I started out on Twitter, personal finance, made some really cool friends in the finance space. Um, and we started to do a weekly space called The Wealth of Knowledge. And it was five of us. We didn't care if anyone was going to show up, but we decided to do a weekly space. And it started to grow. We did it every Saturday. People started tuning in. But what was really cool was, like I mentioned, I really started to get into the creator economy, see people build their personal brand. And I moved towards my personal brand, and I think I had probably around 250 followers at the time when I transitioned to like a personal face, profile picture, and everything. Um, so I started to think, okay, how am I going to set myself apart? Because at that point, I didn't know what direction I was going to take. I knew I didn't want to do SEO. I could have monetized SEO and built a brand and got clients for SEO. I know I didn't want to do that. So I was figuring out what I wanted to do. I didn't know at that time. And so I was starting to think, okay, how am I going to stand out? Because I got 250 followers, and everywhere I look, everyone's saying the same thing. You look at someone's bio, I help you grow on Twitter. I help you monetize your personal brand. I help you tweets on copywriting, marketing, and dog walking. Like it's all the same stuff. And so I was like, man, I'm going to have to stand out. So I just did the one thing because, like I said at the beginning, I was like, I'm going to make this work. I don't know how, but I'm going to make it work. So I just said, I'm going to try the one thing that will allow me to stand out. And that was to tell my story in real time. So, funnily enough, even though I came away from Instagram, I'm actually back on there now promoting the podcast because you realize when you start posting content, you're like, no one really cares. You know, the fear of rejection and failure, it's not that deep. And even if people do laugh at you and judge you, they're probably forgotten after about 5 seconds and are back
Yeah.
concerned about their own lives. So, but I came to Twitter and I realized, okay, it was a bit scary at first because I was like, man, I kind of didn't want to come to social media for this reason, but I think this might be my way to stand out. So I actually started to tell my story and build in public in real time. So I learned about this thing, obviously building in public from Kieran Drew. He had built his whole creative business really in public, sharing his story in public, his growth, his revenue, his product launches. So I thought maybe I'll try the same. So I started telling my story. So I literally just started writing tweets and threads, just saying, hey, I'm Aidan. I'm an SEO specialist here in the UK, but I'm on a mission. Next year, I'm going to be getting married. Well, this was last year. I said this. So next year, I'm going to be getting married, moving to Germany. And, I've bet on myself for a year. I bet on myself to see if I can build an audience, build a personal brand, build an online business where it allows me to leave my 9 to 5 in SEO and build a create business and move to Germany. And so I started just telling this story in real time, and I started sharing it like in tweets, in long forms, little updates on my audience, little updates on my life, little updates on just stuff. And it's just started to pick up momentum. And I haven't posted it in a while, but you can look back at some of my old like tweets and long forms from like this time last year, and I was sharing stories, and they were like going crazy, like they were just popping off, and just all of a sudden people started to tune in to the journey, send me DMs, dude, I'm rooting for you. I totally relate. I'm working in this job, but I have a goal here. I want to do the same. Like, thank you, thank you for sharing. And I started to realize I started to build this mini community around this kind of goal. And people were joining in, and people started to, say, oh man, like, Aidan, he's the story guy, he's telling his story and built a brand around his story. And so I would say that kind of helped me grow. And then from there, some cool opportunities came. But if I was to share one reason why I stand out, it's not because I'm so much better, not because I have this crazy extra authority. I didn't come into Twitter, of course, having experience in SEO definitely helps set you apart. But I wasn't like done $10 million in copywriting sales, so I was still fairly new. But I think just telling my story and the effect that had, I think that kind of helped me put myself in a little lane of my own, which was really cool now looking back.
Wow, that's really cool, and I really resonate with sharing your story. People that share their story aren't X are usually the people that I'll follow and tune
Mm,
into because it's everyone trying to tell you what to do rather than saying what they're doing. I think is the biggest problem, especially since I think if you tell people what to do, especially as a small account, they're just going to attribute your process and idea to somebody else who's bigger. So if you talk about habits, they're just going to think of James Clear, not
mm,
you.
so true. Yeah, it's so true. And what I found as well is if that, and I still haven't really cracked this code. I've kind of taken a different approach now, but what I discovered is that if you can share your story or share your business mission, your brand mission, your journey, whatever this is, if you can do it in a way where your reader is the hero of the story, so they're not reading it and just seeing, of course you're talking about yourself, but in some way, if you can make your reader the hero of the journey, the hero of the story, they see themselves in your story, even though you're talking about your updates, how your business is growing, how you're growing. But if they can see themselves in your story, where they're like, I'm what following Christian, but you know what? He's kind of like a beacon of hope for me because maybe I'm following Christian and I'm seeing him at a young age build a business. He's sharing how he's doing it. He's sharing how he wants to, build this fulfilled life. He doesn't want to follow this path. He wants to follow this path. That's me too. And by following Christian's journey, I feel like there's hope and there's inspiration to also achieve the same. And so if you can make your reader the hero, wow, that you can build some powerful stuff because now you've got a real following of people who are very invested in what you do. And of course, in this whole game, it's a very cliche phrase now, but it's true. You don't need more followers, you need more fans.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like you share that you've taken to your call to adventure, and then that allows other people to do the same.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Also, for some reason, I think the camera is a little blurry for you. I don't know if maybe turning it
Really?
off and on might.
Okay, 1 second.
I'm not
Any
sure if
better?
it, I'm not sure if it has to do with Zencaster, and at the end it'll look fine, but it's still a little blurry. But I can see you. But it's really
Weird.
it's strange.
Yeah, in my corner it looks okay, but
If it looks okay on yours, it might at the end just end up looking fine. Because I know on Riverside it looks blurry when I record, and then at the end it looks perfectly fine. So I've never had it
okay,
happen on Zencaster, but we can hope.
well, we'll find out.
Yeah. Um, you've grown a successful personal brand on Twitter over the last year. If you had to restart, how would you get back to where you are in this current X environment?
It's a good question. You can hear me okay, by the way.
Yep.
Everything's okay. Okay, great. Um, it's a good question. So, what I'm going to start by saying is, first of all, I think it's really important to, first of all, establish your goal, like your why, right? So, if your goal is you just want to build a brand for the long term, you do want to monetize, but maybe, you just want to build more of a network for yourself, build more of a brand, then you might approach the game differently as someone who wants to utilize their personal brand mainly as a way to generate inbound leads or make it easier to generate leads for your business. So I think that's really important to find out because I know a lot of people fall into the trap of, well, I'm going to build my personal brand, and they didn't have a vision to start with. So they started posting content, posting tweets, commenting on all these things, but they never had an offer and they never had an idea of what the actual business is going to look like. So then they struggle to monetize, especially when they maybe eventually got to the place where they realized who they wanted to serve and it was different from the audience they've built. And now they struggle selling their offer. So I'd say it really depends because my goals now are slightly different. So whilst off platform, I'm mainly in like the email marketing space. So, in the email marketing world of like D2C brands, like I work with like some vitamin brand and do like some stuff in the info product space. So that's different, like out of the platform. But I don't have a goal right now anyway to really talk about email in my personal brand and get clients through my personal brand through content because it's just not what I want to do. I've had a think and I've had a reflection. That's not what I want to do. I would rather right now leverage my podcast, leverage my personal brand to continue to share my ideas, build a greater network, and to promote the podcast. So that's my plan now. So it really depends on your why. If your goal was the first one, which is you want to monetize your personal brand and make it easier to generate leads for your business, then I think first of all you'd want to get very clear. You don't even need a big audience. Getting very clear on your who you're serving and your offer, and validating that. Like I know people who validated offers with a social media bit following, but I've never maybe posted a bit of content, but all of it's been happening in the DMs, making conversations, getting on market research calls, validating your research and building an offer. And now that you have an offer that's validating, now you can start posting content and getting people to your email list, because now you've got somewhere for them all to go, which is to your offer eventually, so you can monetize, whether it's through your done for you service or if you have a done with you coaching program or something. And then obviously with that, you'd want to, really just have a solid pipeline of potential prospects, start writing content that's probably not going to go viral, but it's going to be very specific to your audience. It's going to be perspective shifting, it's going to be belief shifting, it's going to be authority based testimonials, etc., to get people to raise their hands and to reach out. So I'd say that's probably the approach I'd go to if I was really focused on just like business. But if you're trying to build a personal brand as a way just to, start growing an audience, grow your influence, grow your network, then if you was to start in this environment now, because the environment's changed. Like I know people like a year and a half ago, the environment, the algorithm was so different. You could write a thread on 6 copywriting techniques and it would absolutely explode and you get 1,000 followers overnight. Like it was happening on a regular. Also, there was paid retweets. I'm not sure if you've heard about that whole side of the world. But they were massive. You could just get 10 paid retweets and absolutely explode, like literally just go hundreds of thousands of impressions. But since Elon took over, it's very different. The reach is different. Those retweets don't work as much. You can't just explode like that. So you definitely have to now, you have to be definitely more long game focused. You definitely have to be focused on very good content if you want to grow. So having a very good variety of understanding how to, have the broader content, which is going to get reach, build that brand around your story, around personality content where people are going to buy into you. And then kind of solid belief shifting content, which is going to get people to see you as an authority, move to your email list so that you can, effectively turn like prospects into potential clients. And then obviously you've got the whole classics, which are, you're going to have to, it's just the name of the game, isn't it? Commenting well, networking well, making friends so that you're going to boost your own content. And yeah, I'd probably say those are a few that come to mind. Yeah.
Wow, that's so much really good information in there. What would you say are some of the biggest changes from the old Twitter environment to the current Twitter environment?
It's a good question. Um, So I'd say those are a few. I think what I've noticed is that the market of the Twitter, money Twitter space, the market is sophisticated over the last year or so. So there's a lot of people last year, who had like growth programs that were doing super well. Like, and their offer was helping you grow, like a coaching program. Um, it was really interesting. I kind of fell into that trap a bit, the growth trap, I'll be honest. But I never really had and what was crazy was because I started telling my story, I don't think I mentioned this, but I started to get people reaching out to me asking if I can consult them on my approach of how to tell my story and build a brand around my story. And I literally had people reaching out to me and paying me just to consult them on my approach. And, these were founders. There's two like multi 6-figure creators reaching out because they wanted to hear my philosophy. I was on a space one time, and one listened and sent me a DM and was like, "Man, I'd love to pick your brains like on this because I want to build my brand around like this." So that was crazy. But I think that kind of eventually died out when the whole growth mantra kind of people started seeing through that, which is that to grow and then teach other people how to grow is not viable because, well, if someone pays you and they grow, what they're going to do, they're going to either just charge an offer where they're going to help other people grow, or what else are you going to do? Because you don't have a business. So there's no way that's a sustainable model. You're not going to pay someone $1,000 a month to help them grow because you're not getting a return on investment. Eventually, you're like, well, I'm not making money back really on this. So I'd say that. But from a general point of view, I think last year, it was a lot easier to get reach with your content. Um, Paid retweets were big. Long forms came out and they were being heavily pushed, so you could write a long form and get some good reach. And what I think was different was, I mean, it's definitely still there. I'm not invested in it as much, so you can let me know. But I remember around this time last year, there's so many people coming into Twitter, and that environment was so encouraging. It was very uplifting. A lot of people telling their stories, a lot of people coming in with their mission, and like a really cool community started to foster. A lot of people making friends, a lot of people making connections. And then I think over time, it seems as if a lot of people left. Maybe they couldn't make it work. Maybe they had different reasons. Um, and it became a lot more difficult actually to keep it going. So maybe people left, and I think there was a bit of toxicity as well. A lot of people calling each other out. I noticed at some point it just got very strange. So I would say those are some of the main differences. But even though Twitter is an interesting place now, like it's not super easy to grow, not you don't get the same level of reach. I still am bullish on it because of the people there, like we mentioned. Got some very high level people on there. You can change your life with networking. If you have a great offer, some phenomenal way to get clients. Um, but also, I don't know. I just get this sense that, and I'm not. There's no logic for this. Like I'm no expert on like trends and analytics and stuff. But I just don't think there's no way that Elon, like when I see the long term of Twitter, like the next 10 years, I'm hoping it's going to be like the stock market, which is like we've kind of come in here, and it's kind of like gone down for a while, and we're like, man, this sucks. But in the long term, it's going to level out as Elon makes better plans and how he's going to develop it. So we'll see, really.
Uh, yeah, that's so interesting because I really have had no experience with the old Twitter. Because I mean, I found Dan Coe last summer, about a year ago,
Mm.
but I only really went to Twitter uh, 7 months ago at this point. Do you think that it's more saturated now? Like the amount of people trying to do the same thing is more saturated than it was a year ago?
Um, it's a really good question. I'll be honest. I'm probably not on the platform and interrogating it enough to see. You know what? I would say that I don't think it's saturated. I think actually now it seems like a really nice time to be in because a lot of people that I know anyway have left and not on the platform, not active. A lot of people. So I think when opportunities dwindle or there's um, moments that are difficult, there's always going to be opportunities as well. So I'm seeing some people that are still making it work. They're still growing. They're taking off. They're learning how the game works. Um, So I think it's still possible, but I think what it has been saturated and a lot of people have, moved away from is this whole sense of growth. And I
Mm,
think that was what happened, especially if you're a young person. It's easy to fall into because you come to Twitter, you hear about Danco, and then if you don't know what you're doing or don't have an understanding of business, you can very quickly, you're doing your personal brand, but you're seeing what works. You're seeing, oh, if that person posted a platitude and it just got 50,000 impressions, that person's doing a thread about, here is Andrew Huberman. I have studied 5,000 of his hours of his work. Here are 7 lessons. Oh, wow, that works. So now all of a sudden you start doing what everyone else is doing.
yeah.
And then you realize, wow, I can monetize this by coaching others how to do it. It's an
Yeah.
easy trap to fall into.
It's really
So a lot of people
strange.
fall. But I think a lot of people that I see anyway, I've kind of woken up to that, realized it's not sustainable. It's not right. It's not it's not the best way of going about it. The best way is to either learn a skill, get clients, and build your brand at the same time. Or if you have an existing business, leverage your brand to build more awareness for that business.
I see. So, like, instead of sort of teaching the skill of growth hacking, it's more maybe teaching the skill of storytelling or thread writing or um, some other sort of specific skill. And you can almost, it's like instead of teaching growth, you're teaching the skill that allowed you to grow in some ways, but it can also be
Mm.
used in other areas. Is that sort of?
Yeah. Well, I think that's cool. I would say that's definitely cool. Like helping people write threads is cool, helping people to tell stories is cool. But I think that's where we've got to again get into, okay, what's the point of, so if you want to become known as, you want to monetize, well, then you have to connect, like you say, you're the thread writing guy or the storytelling guy. If you have an offer, you're going to have to connect that to, if you're going to get clients who are going to pay you, well, why are they paying you? It's because you're going to save them time or make them more money. So you've got to connect storytelling to one of those things. And there should be a quantifiable outcome, because if someone's going to pay you and you're saying, I'm going to help you become a master at storytelling, what does that mean? Am I going to sacrifice $1,000 a month to pay you for that? What does the outcome look like? Is it believable? What am I going to get from this? Um, so I would say the storytelling thread writing aspect could be great ways to build authority and kind of have an angle for your content, but it might be difficult to build. I haven't seen many people build a whole offer off of that. For example, thread writing, it's really good. And I think I've seen people who have mega authority already because they were ghostwriters who did 50K a month ghostwriting, and now they're teaching other people in their communities, like Taylin, for example. It makes sense to have thread writing as part of the curriculum because it's one of the assets that you can learn to grow and monetize. But to be someone who's brand new and you had a few threads go do well, and you're going to try and monetize thread writing, it's going to be quite difficult, isn't it? Because, well, what's the quantifiable outcome I'm going to give someone if they're going to buy my thread writing coaching service? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess if you were trying to move away from the growth thing, it would sort of be that you teach people how to write threads to get leads to their offer and like a call to action or grow their email list or
Exactly.
something like that.
Exactly. That's a lot better. That's a lot better. And the main thing is to, especially, we just got to think about it from a consumer ourselves. If I was going to buy that service, well, I want to make sure that I know what I'm getting. And there's there is strong evidence to suggest that I'm going to get that outcome, right? Because if I'm going to spend my money on thread writing, coaching, I want to know, if I'm going to spend a hefty amount, what am I really getting? And so the person offering that service, you want to be confident that you can really deliver results.
Yeah. Um, why do you think personal brands struggle to be an authority?
Hmm. It's a good question, but I think honestly, this question is just really simple. I think it's because you haven't done anything. I know that sounds crazy, but you haven't done
Yeah.
anything. Like, either there's two areas. So either you haven't built a skill. So if you have a skill, like like we said, when you go back to your why, so why are you building your brand? The first one is, okay, do you want to monetize like a skill? You want to get, do a done for your service. Well, if that's true, well, then you need to be seen as an authority in that area, so that people are going to say, okay, he knows what he's doing. I'm going to listen. I'm going to buy. Um, but if you have never learned the skill, you've never practiced the skill, you've never put it out there, you've never worked for free or done some discounted work to help a client, then what are you going to talk about? You can only talk about, I don't know, curations from books you've learned, copywriting techniques you've learned from a book or a video. That's just borrowing authority. So you can only get authority when you've just done the thing. And then secondly, I think another way of building authority, which I've noticed, and like I said, depending on your goal, but if your goal is to grow some kind of influential brand or something that people get behind or follow, is going and doing things. So instead of doing like mastering a skill, it's like doing something in life. If you've traveled the world and you're going to share your experiences from living in 5 different countries, then that's kind of crazy. Or if you've gone through, I don't know, I'm just making stuff off the top of my head, 3 marriages, and you're breaking down, the lessons, the good, the bad, the ugly, that's powerful because not everyone's done that. So it's experience that not lots of people have done, or your unique experience, so that you can share your lessons, and immediately people are going to listen because, well, this guy's done stuff that not the average person hasn't done, so he has the right to share knowledge and experience because he's gained it firsthand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that even I did when I came to Twitter, came probably without much authority, even though I had built skills from trying other things before. So I guess that's some authority, but I think a lot of people come to Twitter, try to grow a brand, especially if they come from Danco, will try to post the platitudes and not realize the amount of skills and things in the background that people have built, like Danco writing a newsletter every week or learning graphic design and all these other skills that he's stacked that gives him authority. It's not the platitudes that give him authority, really.
Mm, exactly. And you know what? I'm thinking about it now. If I was going back and I was trying to build a skill-based business or service-based business, like before even building a brand, and remember, let's say the goal was to use my personal brand and content to get leads. Think about it. You can save yourself so much work. Imagine you just went through your network. So say I'm doing email marketing, for example. Let's say you go to your network and you find someone who maybe someone you know who could make either in your direct network or can make you an introduction, or someone in your audience who needs email marketing. And you get in touch and you either, depending on your philosophy, you work for free for a testimonial, or you do very discounted work for a testimonial, get the results. Now, all of a sudden, you come to X and you're already 75% of the way past everyone, because now you come to Twitter and you start posting about email marketing and doing the growth thing, but you just start showing the one testimonial you have, the
Yep.
case study. You just generated tons of leads. You just generated tons of sales through your welcome sequence you built for someone. And you post that to Twitter, and the video testimonial of the person who worked with you and they're happy. Bob's your uncle. So you've already built tons of authority through that. You know what I mean?
Yep. I think that case studies are, I think, sort of underrated in some ways. I feel like I don't see them used enough, or really I don't, and I'm learning right now how to build a good case study because I have a
Mm,
client. So it's just like it's like um one case study can get you so many other opportunities. So it's just incredible. It's like
so
incredible
true.
leverage.
Yeah, it's massive. It's massive.
What is your process for creating content currently as a creator?
Mm. So yeah, at the moment, I'll be honest, probably not the best person to ask, because I've changed my approach slightly. So I was writing a lot more content last year. Now I'm mainly just sharing ideas, keeping the momentum going, promoting the podcast. So obviously mine's a bit different. I'm mainly using Twitter, but I'm also on Instagram and TikTok at the moment for promoting the podcast. So I've got Instagram and putting some shorts out. So usually, if you want to know this process, it's pretty simple. It's just like episodes go live with Wednesday, and then the day before, a couple of days before, I started posting reels on Insta and TikTok, just like building up some hype, building up some appetite for the episode. It goes live on Wednesday, and then there's reels Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, pushing people from the short form to the long form piece of content, which is on YouTube. So that's kind of my process. When it comes to Twitter, at the moment, I'm kind of doing the same and dropping a few tweets here and there. I've got some really cool things lined up, actually. Really cool. On Monday, I'll just share this very briefly, but Monday I've got my first in-person guest. So I did an in-person podcast. So I'll drop that on Monday, which is really fun. So I'm kind of, unique at the moment in terms of what I do. But I guess last year when I was quite heavily into content, I'm not sure if this is a trend anymore, but this worked really well for me last year. Was I'd kind of like post 3 times a day. The first tweet would be kind of my growth lever tweet. It's that morning tweet, some kind of more of a platitude or more of a controversial take or something that people are going to like and retweet, kind of for the exposure. And then the second tweet of the day would be that kind of value tweet, or that tweet that's kind of either shifting beliefs or educating the audience. And then the third tweet of the day would either be some kind of authority tweets or some kind of a testimonial or case study, or a personality tweet. So I'd mix it up. Maybe, me, I don't know, on a walk, or like what I'm thinking or what I'm doing, just to kind of build that relatability. And I think that did pretty well. And so I'd be collecting ideas throughout the week, my own experiences, people I'd be watching and listening to, have an idea bank on Notion. And then I'd be kind of scheduling on the weekend, So it's pretty simple. But I'll be honest, I'm probably not the best person anymore to talk to about content. I probably should be asking you, bro.
Yeah. Well, in my experience, it seems like there's a lot of flexibility currently with the way people are creating content. Some people are going heavily on threads, people going heavily on long forms. Some people post once a day, some people
Mm,
post 3 times a day. It seems like there's a lot of variability
many
currently.
approaches. How about you? I'm curious. How are you seeing content? What's your process at the moment for ideating, creating?
Right now, I just try to post one long form daily. I think
That's
more to
cool.
build
Nice.
the writing skill. When I was on vacation, I was just posting like sort of a platitude with a picture because I didn't really want to be working while I was away.
Sure.
But yeah, the long forms, I know there's a creator recently who's grown to 1,300 followers in 2 months just from one quality post every day.
Serious.
Yeah. So,
Dang, that's crazy.
yeah. So there's definitely this trend of people want, I think, longer content. And I think I like that more than the
Mm,
shorter posts, even though they're very useful for just getting eyes.
nice. Have you noticed that the more of the story-based content has been really working well for yourself in terms of the progress you've been finding?
Yeah, definitely this story. I don't think I've cracked it yet, but there's definitely people who have that have blown up.
Mm, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I love that.
What are your thoughts on niching down versus being broad?
Hmm. It's a good question, man. Um, so there's so many philosophies on this that I'm not sure if there is. I don't actually know the right answer anymore. Like, there's so many people, right? There's the classic approach, which is find a niche, a group of people you want to serve, dentists who are in London, who are making 7 figures a year and have 3 toes. Like, you can get very specific. And that's kind of the classic model. That works. It totally works. There's also Dan's kind of approach, which is like the niche of one. Um, I'm not sure if I fully agree with that. I'll be honest. Like, I think I like the concept, which I think is that you've built your own lane, or you've built your own specific place in the market. But I'm not sure if you become the niche. Like, for example, a niche is a specific group or a specific specialized segment of the market. So I'm not sure if there's a specialist segment of the market called Aidan, you know? So I'm not sure if that works, but I get the concept behind it and I think it's very powerful. I think I kind of like, I think Kieran Drew talks about this. I'm not sure if he still talks about this anymore, but there's this concept of like niching into transformation, which is kind of like I'm niching into what I'm known for. So, like, I'm kind of known for the mechanism. So rather than like I serve the niche of doctors in London, I am, the transformation of, helping coaches. I've got this system that books 10 calls a week for coaches. Like, that's my mechanism. So people come to me, they know the transformation that I offer them. I think that's pretty cool. But when it comes to the concept of niche, I think it really depends so many things on your business model. It depends on like your future of your business and how you see it working. But what I would say is, I think beginners or people who are just starting out, it is tempting to say, I'm going to become the niche of one. But I haven't really seen that work out super well at the start, because if you're just getting started, no one cares really about who you are, what you've got to say. Like, you have to earn that right. You have to become interesting. So how are you going to become the niche of one talking about jazz, and then I talk about sushi, and then I'm just talking about my interests, like, and no one knows me, no one cares about what I've got to say. I haven't, showed any authority or anything. Um, so I think that is a bit of a trap, which is I would probably suggest starting more mainstream to start with, like, find this group of people to serve, find a transformation to get involved with. But as you grow, as you start finding momentum, as you start getting results for yourself and clients, you start making a bit of a name for yourself in the space. Now you can start differentiating yourself from others in the competition who are doing the same thing with your interests, with your ideas, with your specific worldviews, because now those clients who can choose Bob over here for email marketing, maybe they're going to choose me now because they really resonate with my worldview, with my ideas, with my interests. So that's how you can kind of differentiate yourself. I hope that helps. But
Yeah, I
to be honest,
really
I'm no
appreciate
expert
that.
on this yet.
I don't know how many people are experts on this. It seems to be very nuanced
Yeah,
topic. Yeah.
it is nuanced. Yeah.
Yeah, from my understanding, the way Dan approaches it, and I'm not, maybe it is possible to niche one from the start, but it seems that you have to niche up, be broader as you go on, because it's like you have to have the authority before anyone cares about who you are.
Exactly.
But it's like a broad brand and then a specific product. So his broad brand is his lifestyle and his philosophy, and the way he's able to do that is 2 Hour Writer. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, that's true. So many ways. I wonder if eventually we will get to the point where we realize the answer, or if there's not.
Yeah. Um, you've sort of covered this, but what would you say? What would some suggestions be to beginners wanting to grow a personal brand on Twitter? And let's say um, their goal is monetization.
Yeah. So what I would say is it's pretty simple. There's just a couple of things you need, really. You need um, an avatar, so someone you're serving. You need an offer, so something that takes them from A to B, that's validated, that would help. And then you need some kind of sales system, a process, right? How you're going to turn a stranger into a client, right? There's so many ways you're going to do that. You could send DMs, you can write content. There's so many things. So say you want to get the fundamentals down first. So first of all, who are you serving? And then what I would do if I was to honestly started out, like honestly, like I'd find who I want to serve. I'd start building a list of people, maybe 100 people, who either are my potential client or their audience is my potential client. So now you're kind of getting in the facility of people who might you need your service. And then, start connecting, start engaging in content, start following, start reaching out. And when you've been able to do that now because you've built trust, rather than just sending a cold DM, you've kind of built that connection. For example, let's say you've engaged with their content first, they know you've built a bit of a relationship, now you send the DM, they recognize your face, you have a bit of a chat, it's not a pitch in the first message. You build that trust, and then what I would do is I would try and jump on 10 to 20 market research calls if I was a beginner and starting out with your ideal client, because now you can go have 10 calls. You can ask them 4 questions. What's your dream outcome? What are you trying to achieve? What obstacles are getting in your way? What have you tried in the past to solve this? And what solutions do you wish existed? Record every call. I use Fathom, which is like an AI tool, fathom.ai, and it basically gives you a summary of the call afterwards. So all the key takeaways of the call. And now, let's say you've done 10 calls, you can look at the data, you can look at the patterns, you can look at the common outcomes and the common pain points of your ideal avatar. And now you have a validated offer. You can really start. Well, first of all, you're going to put together a beta or test, right? And then you're going to send that beta test to the people you've been reaching out to, because if it solves their problems, they can take you up on it, and then you can start getting in the game. If you can start selling an offer, you can start validating it, getting results, and then now, in the meantime, what I would be doing as well is I would be getting in the content game. I'd be learning the game. I'd be growing. I'd be writing some content, exploring, making some friends. But now, once you have that offer and you have it validated, now you can really start writing content, because now there's so many opportunities that are open to you. You can send warm DMs. So everyone who comes through your audience, you can connect with them. If they're the right people, you can start, thanks for following, building a conversation, see if you can help, share your offer if they might be interested. You can write really good content with an auto plug, like, if this resonates with you, reply coconut, and I can help you do X, Y, and Z in the next 90 days, whatever your offer is. You can get people on your email list with a lead magnet, and now you've got that welcome sequence automated because the offer's validated. So you're going to pull out a little chunk of the offer, 10% of it, which might give you a quick win, and offer that as the lead magnet. And your ideal client is like, yeah, I need that. And then the next logical step after getting the lead magnet is, well, that helped me solve problem one, but I need two and three and four. Maybe I should go for the official offer. And you have an email system getting people onto, or onboarded there. So that's where it gets really exciting. But I think the key problem is that everyone wants to do everything else before having the offer. You want to send all the emails, send all the DMs, write all the content. But if you don't have an offer, you're not going to get anywhere. So especially if the goal is to monetize, the goal is how can I start getting an offer up and running as quickly as possible and testing it out there, getting it tested and getting it refined so that I can validate it, and then it gets exciting.
Yeah, that was amazing. I'm probably gonna have to clip that. That was really great. So
Yeah,
much
you're welcome.
value in there.
And I think, to be honest, I'm speaking from someone who I didn't do that at the start. So I was kind of trying to figure it out. But then I worked with someone who is, an awesome guy. He's got a great, business model on Twitter. But I really started to see, okay, this is how you apply the business side to the brand side. The business side of building offer sales systems, they're fundamentals. They will always be the way it is. Market research, finding burning pain pointing solutions to problems. So then that's fundamental. Now you connect that to the brand, and then it becomes a lot. There's a cool roadmap to follow. So that's what I try and do nowadays. To be honest, even though I'm still using my personal brand for the podcast, when I am potentially connecting with people for potential, email work, I'll kind of just ask a few questions. Like I'll do a bit of market research. I'll ask, what's your dream outcome? What are you struggling with? What do you wish existed? What have you been trying? And now you have their own answers, and you can start packaging something around that, And if it solves that person's problem, then they're going to want it solved, right? Potentially. So it reframes a lot of things instead of like pitching someone, I'll get you 50 book calls in the next week. And they're like, I don't even want that. Like, I don't need that. But now that approach is very different. You build that relationship, because that's what a lot of people get wrong on Twitter. They're pitching in the first cold DM very poorly, and you lose that relationship. It's over. How can you connect with that person now? You can't send them a message and say, "Oh, hi, by the way, cool post." Like, it's ruined. But build that connection, build that, show some interest in them, have a conversation, find out what they're doing. You share about your story. Then next thing you know, if it fits, you can get some information, some data, see if you can help. It seems like it's a lot more sustainable approach.
Yeah. What's your process of sort of taking like warm DMing to turning them into a client?
Hmm. So I'm just going to be really honest. I haven't. So because of the way I transitioned my brand, I haven't been going crazy with the warm DMs at the moment. Like I've been having some cool conversations, and I'm currently in the process of potentially building out a new offer on Twitter. So I actually am having those conversations now. People who are following me, connecting, thanking them for following, trying to find out a bit more about them, connecting, saying hello, chatting, and then either asking them if they'd be willing to do, jump on a market research call. I'm doing, putting some stuff together, be super helpful, be happy to give you a free advice on X, Y, and Z if that could help as a way to say thank you. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. So I haven't been going hard on the warm DMs stuff, but I know people who have done it, who do it very successfully. And it's pretty simple, really, I guess. It's like, people who are showing interest in your content, so they're following or showing interest, that seem to be your ideal client. Because they've already there's a touch point, you've already overcome that really freezing cold DM, right? Because if you DM someone you don't know, the likelihood of someone responding it's not as high as if you've already following someone, they reach out to you. It makes a lot more sense, right? Because now you're like, oh, Aidan he messaged me, I follow him, I love his content. So it's like, hey man, like, how you doing? Thanks for the follow. What you building at the moment? Just reaching out to connect with some cool people. just finding out, being curious and being real. People can smell the fishy. Okay, where's the pitch coming? But just having a conversation, and if you can find out where they are, what they're trying to achieve, what they're struggling with, and then when it fits, you can position your offer as the solution and see if you can get them on, a call to share your offer, share your service, and then it's a classic sales call, close, onboard, etc., etc.
Yeah, I love that. That makes so much sense. And I definitely don't really resonate with cold DMs too much because I've gotten enough of them. And I can imagine how many bigger creators get where it just gets exhausting of like the copy and paste DM where they're telling you about something that you don't want at all. And they haven't
Mm,
really took the time to really understand what you need.
exactly. It does suck. So I think there's probably like two major approaches, really, which is if you're going to cold DM, see it as a way to warm up the conversation, to build up connections with an open mind. So you're seeing, okay, I'm not coming in just to try and get this person's wallet. They might be a potential client, but I'm coming in to have a conversation. Maybe they're going to be a friend. Maybe they're going to refer me. Maybe they're going to be a client. So that's a way to warm up the conversation. Or if you are, because it can work, I'm not going to sit here and say it doesn't work. There are people who've built very successful businesses through cold emails and cold DMs. But usually, if you're going down the cold DM route, it's because you've got a very specific offer that is very relevant for the person who sees it, and it's backed up with authority. So, for example, if I'm a dentist and I'm so desperate for someone to take care of my sales system, and I get a cold DM saying, "Hey, we have a sales system that solves X, Y, and Z," it's like very relevant. But if you're a beginner, cold DMs are not easy because you don't have any authority to go over. So the only way that might work out is, let's say you're a video editor. In fact, this just happened to me. There's someone who's reached out to me, um, quite new in the space, young guy, reached out with a cold DM, and I don't really respond to many, but either two things are going to get your attention. If someone does some work for you up front, so they're going to maybe they edit a video, so they edit a clip of your podcast, Christian, and it's a really cool clip. They send it you for free, and you're like, "Whoa, I need that." That makes sense. But this guy in particular, he sent me and this is doesn't always work because if you're targeting very busy founders, this is not going to work. But in my case, it worked because I'm not like crazy or busy. He sent me a 10-minute Loom video breaking down my podcast. How I'm missing out on shorts, why shorts could be helping me, X, Y, and Z. So I was like, man, I really appreciate that. It was very intentional. And we had that conversation and we're doing a little project to start with. So that's the way it worked. But I think, yeah, if you're just coming in blazing, gung ho, cold DMs, no authority, and not putting any work up front, it's going to be difficult to get it rolling.
Yeah, I love that. And I when I was trying to do educational email courses, that's the process that Nicholas Cole and Dickie Bush recommended was doing like free consulting. You send them a loom, giving them some advice.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Email courses are cool. Did you decide wasn't the right fit in the end?
Yeah, I realized I wanted to focus more on building my brand since I'm able to play the long game rather than sort of sacrificing my focus on getting good at content and connections for like making short-term money with educational email courses. So I
Yeah.
guess being more of a personal case study rather than building for other people right away.
Nice. That's cool, man. That's nice.
Moving over to podcasting. Why did you start a podcast?
Hmm. Very good question. So I haven't even announced this yet on Twitter. I'm finding the right moment for this. It's not been the right moment yet. I have shared it with some people and I shared it on a space when I returned. So the Christian LaBosco podcast will have the first um, kind of story behind this. So the short version is at the end of last year, I started, which I'm still in now, but I'm towards the end of it, started a very crazy health battle that I went through. And it was very difficult. And it really was just very unexpected, and it knocked me out completely. Not literally, but knocked me off my feet, and I was now battling this health issue. And it was a very hard process. I had to give up a lot of things, sacrifice a lot of things, really lose the momentum that I'd built in a way, and I had to focus on my health. Um, and it got really hard at times. There was times where I won't go into too many details, but there's times like there's a period because of it I couldn't move much, and so when you can't move, you start to realize like, oh man, like you have a big reality check. And I feel like I'm always been the type of person I'd like to say who is quite grounded in the right success metrics. Like I always think about the big questions. Like am a man of faith. Um, yeah, I'm a follower of Christ actually. So because of that, I'm always thinking about the big picture. I'm always thinking about big questions, the deep questions, the why, because in my opinion, what you believe about the end determines how you live in the middle. So because of that, I like to think I am that type of person. But yeah, when you're going hard and now all of a sudden you can't go hard and you're stuck, you really realize, okay, what are the things that I worry about that really don't matter? And what are the things that I know I should be doing that I've put off because of whatever? And I realized for one of them, I've always wanted to do a podcast ever since I was young, always wanted to do a podcast. And if you ask me now, what is the one thing if you could do one thing, money wasn't a problem, you didn't even have to think about it, what would that one thing do? And it would be for me easy, hands down, start a podcast, travel the world, talk with the greatest minds and
That's the
unpack
same
people's
for me.
stories. There you go, bro. So if you do that one thing, what would it be? And I realized spaces last year was so fun because it was my practice time. I got to host these spaces. People were listening. Like people, is a couple of spaces, like 100+ listeners coming in live, and I was interviewing some great people. It was starting to build my brand because I was getting some big creators on, and it was having that momentum effect. And I loved it. I loved interviewing people. It was great practice. So I always knew I wanted a podcast, but I kind of put it off because, well, I want my business to be in this point. I want X, Y, and Z to be in a row. But then obviously the health thing came along, and I realized, well, if I'm a healthy person who's done everything right and everything can still just vanish tomorrow, then why am I putting this on the back burner? So I just said to myself, well, let's do it. As soon as I get back in the game, I'm going to launch the podcast. We're going to get some equipment. We're going to get the boom arm and the mic, and we're just going to start going with it. And we're going to just not going to stop. We're just going to keep doing one episode a week. And so that was kind of the origin story, which was the message behind that would be, realize that, life's very short and everything can be taken away from us, very quickly. So if that is the case, what is the thing you're called to? And if you're not doing it, why you're not doing it? And so for me, it was like, well, let's do it and let's do what matters. And that was the origin.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel the same way about podcasts. It's sort of maybe the zone of genius for me, where it's just it feels like play. Like
Yeah, man.
I I don't know. It doesn't. I guess most people don't get over 10 episodes, and I think part of the reason I have been able to is just because I'm not treating it as like a means to an end. I don't really have a goal with it
Yeah.
except learn from cool people, and that's enough for me.
Absolutely, man. I think that is the key. I totally relate here. Maybe we can delve into this a bit, but me too. The exact same. I feel like this doesn't feel like work. Like, I love talking to people. I love learning from people. And it's such a win. I think podcasting, like even if it doesn't go on to be the next Danny Miranda podcast or Joe Rogan, there's so many benefits. You build a crazy network. You get good at communication skills. You make great friends. There's so many wins, but for
Yeah,
me, I feel the same way. It feels like play. And even if, this doesn't work out the way I want to think so, I'll be doing it anyway, you know?
yeah,
So how do you compete with that person?
yeah, yeah. It's like Joe Rogan. I think for the first 5 years, had no idea how much he was making from it or anything, had no idea what the metrics were, and he was just
Mm.
doing it for the sake of it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the crazy thing is, as well, is that I actually think, a lot of people say podcasts are saturated. I don't think so, actually. If you look at the data, there are more people listening to podcasts than ever. There are more podcasts launching than ever, more people quitting than ever. So if this is your lane, what a lane to be in. But it does feel like video podcasts are really we're really in the center of the sweet spot. Like video podcasts are the thing. A lot of people are tuning in. A lot of people
Yep.
love doing them. And yeah, there's like a lot of demand. So, that's what the best marketers say. If a market's saturated, in other words, for example, you're seeing the same ad everywhere on Instagram, what does that tell you? Does it tell you that the market's saturated, or does it tell you that it's working? So
Hmm.
if something's working, then don't go into the blue ocean over here trying to make your own demand and trying to find something that no one else is doing. Get into the action, but just find your own positioning. You see what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah,
If you
I
can
love
find your
that.
positioning, you're going to delve in, you're going to get a slice of the pie. And even if your slice isn't that big, that slice is enough to pay your bills and way more
Mhm.
and enough to do something you love.
Yeah, I think it's even a more unfair advantage to do a podcast if you're on Twitter because it's mostly text based, so having people be able to see and hear you makes you stand out a lot as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Exactly. I think that's true. Like, I know there's people who started on Twitter. Like, I think of Danny Miranda. I know he's taken a slight break, but like he started on Twitter. He started posting on Twitter. And I think one time, I believe Danny Miranda posted a tweet where he was asking people no, he posted a tweet of his dream guests. And one of them was Gary Vee. And so he posted this tweet of a blog he wrote about Gary Vee like 10 years ago or something, when he was like 15 or something crazy, even younger. And Gary Vee commented on it, like, yo, that's crazy. And then everyone was like commenting, like, no way. Gary Vee should come on his podcast. Like, no way. And literally, Danny Miranda, who was small at the time, got Gary Vee on his podcast, and that changed everything. So
Wow.
I do believe that. It's just one, it might be a journey, but you are literally one episode away from
Yeah.
changing everything. Like, I've seen people that one episode, it just hits, and next thing you know, the trajectory of your podcast changed. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited for
Yeah.
us. Let's roll. Let's keep doing it.
Yeah. It's amazing what can happen because I'm already starting to see some results from having the podcast, just like people reaching out, commenting, yeah, just things like that, which I didn't really expect. Like even like for the people, because like I look at my analytics and I'll see like maybe I'm getting 1 to 3 hours of people watching daily, and I'm like that's not a lot, but then I
Wow.
really think about it and I'm like people are spending 1 to 3 hours on the podcast, and I'm like oh my gosh, that's a lot of time to be spent for people to be watching you every day.
It adds up, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
really starts adding up. Like, think about it. 2 hours a day, seven, that's 14 hours a week.
Yeah.
It's adding up, man. And that's with just getting them out. There's no crazy trailer and the retention
Yeah.
editing and the shorts. Like,
Yeah.
it's a great way to get the ball rolling and find what's working.
Yeah. I'm moving on to like practicing different things. Like my thumbnails, I upgraded those, focusing on my speaking, trying to reduce the number of filler words, being
Hmm.
okay with pauses, things like that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a big one. The pauses and the fillers. Like, in fact, let's just pause. Isn't that funny? Like,
Yeah.
pauses are so powerful,
Hmm.
but like, I think it's so true. I mean, I really like Danny Miranda. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. But one of the things he says is that when he noticed he was, not pausing, or he was, the filler words or whatever, it's usually, of course, you want to put the reps in, you need to practice. But a lot of times, especially when the guests get bigger, there's that part of you, the imposter, that hits, which is, oh shoot, I've got X on the podcast, I've got Y on the podcast, and it starts triggering you, which is like, whoa, do I feel this is an area where I'm not super comfortable in my own skin because this person's on. I don't, I'm scared. I don't feel like I'm worthy. They're so awesome. What are they going to think? So now I'm compromising my own self confidence, which is causing me to turn into a bit of a weirdo. And the best podcasts always have to be authentic, right? As soon as I put my mask on, you put your face on, we start to be different. People can feel that. So I think it's actually a really beautiful journey of like becoming even more comfortable and okay with ourselves. So that when we do get great guests on, we just give ourselves permission to be like, I'm just going to be me, And that's when the best conversations are born.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It really is amazing how powerful pauses are. And there's so many different speech things that you could do to make your talking more powerful. I know there's someone on YouTube that I found who was blowing up on shorts, who was like doing these clips where he'd have someone talking normally and then he just tells them to change one thing about how they talk, and it's just so much more powerful just by focusing on one thing. So it's
Wow.
incredible how much speech is a skill.
Hmm. I wanted to ask you a question. What's your process? Do you even have one? Which is funny. For the transition points between conversations. So when your guest gives you an answer and that transition between whatever you're going to say to the next question, how do you filter that? How's your process for that?
I honestly do not have a
You
process
just kind of
currently.
roll with it. Whatever's in your head,
Yeah.
you just roll with. That's really good. That's really, really good, actually, because I've learned that that transition point is so powerful. Like it's a way to mimic, mime back what you've heard them say. It triggers, something from your experience that you can allude to. You can, ask them a deeper question back. Like I've found that is such a great moment, and it's a skill in itself, in and of itself. And I've realized there's times where I've, found myself like, man, that was weird. Like I, I became weird in that moment, or I just sounded a bit strange, or I don't know, I just said something random, and like, okay, either it's a perfect area for me to feel more comfortable in my own skin, or I want to master this craft. I'm sure there's a cool craft, a way to transition these
Yep.
conversations. So it's fun.
Yeah. The transition, it's sort of almost me trying to remember what you said and say it in a way that I can take away from the podcast. So just saying that out loud, sort of encapsulating it for myself, seeing if
Mm,
I can say it succinctly so it's something I can remember. And that usually will help people. And that's sort of not something I did on purpose. I think it's sort of a way I've done it. And my dad tells me that podcasting is like basically made for me because I've just asked questions since I was very young,
really.
like a ton of questions. So it's sort of my zone of genius that's just what I've done since I was little,
It's amazing.
continually and probably annoyingly ask questions over and over again about everything. So
Are you the one on the journey who's like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
yeah. Or just I remember he told me this. He told me to never stop asking questions. So they nurtured that, my parents. And then I
That's
asked him,
awesome, man.
"What's a question?" Like legitimately, genuinely.
That's funny.
Yeah, what is
That's
a
funny.
question? And I genuinely don't think I fully understood even what a question is. I don't know if I know what it is now, but
Wow, that's
yeah,
awesome, man. You
yeah,
see, that's great. Isn't that what it's all about? Like finding work that feels like play and something that leans into your unfair advantage, that thing you do naturally, that thing you're super curious about, that thing you can do with your eyes closed. Like honestly, listening is such a skill.
hmm.
Like what you just said there, the ability to it's called reflective listening, the ability to listen to what you've just said, package it into this mini conclusion and relay it back to you. Not only does it make the other person feel really respected, like, wow, you really listened to me, but also it draws out even more from them because they're like, wow, that was unpacked so well, that was summarized so well. It now unlocks another thought for me. So not a lot of people can do that. I mean, how many times have you been in a conversation where you speak and you can tell the person you're speaking to is not listening, they're just waiting to speak.
Yeah,
Like they're
I
just waiting
think
to say something and you're like,
yeah.
You can tell, and then you kind of change what you're about to say because well, what's the point being in this conversation because this person's not listening anyway, So it's a powerful skill to be able to communicate, listen, and host a conversation. I think maybe the place is saturated, but hey, not everyone has that skill. That's either born with and developed. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean with the waiting to speak rather than actually listening. It's sort of you hear something they say and you're like, "Oh, I have my answer. All right, I'm done. I'm just gonna wait to say my answer."
Oh yeah, no, especially in like we're not going to that, but like debates and it's so funny, isn't it? Where you're like, okay, I'm not listening to you. There's no matter what you say, it's going to change my mind or it's going to impact me. I'm just waiting to end so that I can just say my thought. I'm like, well, that's not the best way of having a conversation, is it?
Yeah. Um, what would you say are some of those lessons you've learned from your podcast so far? Maybe like with your speech, from certain guests.
It's a great question. Really good question. I would say first of all for me, because I really wanted to hit the ground running. Like I've got the podcast, I've got my shorts, I'm on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. So for me, it's been a lot of systems, like, because I don't want to lose the joy of this. So you can easily lose the joy if you're like clipping up stuff, you're spending the weekend editing and scheduling content. So for me, it's been a lot of systems. But I'm starting to find that sweet spot now where I have like, a bit of time on Friday and Saturday where I'm editing the clips, posting the clip, scheduling, getting everything ready. So that's been one thing. But I think the biggest lesson so far for me have been I've had some really cool guests and I've got some really cool ones lined up. Um, I'd say for me, I'd say interestingly enough, it's been that thing which is giving myself permission just to totally be myself. I know it sounds crazy, but it's like I'm having the podcast and they're doing great, like great guests, great flow of conversation. Um, I've done research, a lot of research into their stories, into making sure that I'm asking questions that no one else asks them. I don't want them to come onto my podcast and be asked the classic questions that everyone else has asked them on their past podcast. I feel like that's not super respectful. Like I want to pull the gold out that hasn't been extracted yet, and I want to do my research. So I think that's been really cool, the research. But what I found is there's been moments where I've said things, um, or maybe the way I've transitioned or the way I've said things, I'm like, this is good. No one would ever know. It's a great conversation, a great podcast. But in my heart, I know that just wasn't you, man. Like that was just
I know
weird. Like
exactly what you mean.
I put on a facade. I
Yeah.
wrapped it up in a very weird way. And it's because I just didn't give myself permission just to fully be myself. I'm overthinking. I'm like, okay, oh, what's going to be the next question? That's going to, that's going to be a really good question. How can I wrap
Yeah.
this up really well? How can I impress them and make sure that they think this is a really worthwhile part of their time? So it's part of me where it's like, okay, I just need to give myself permission to be me, to talk like I do, wrap it up like I do, because I've done the work. I know that I've done the research, so I don't have to stress about am I good enough? Is this person going to question if it's worth their time? All that stuff. It's about me now, just being myself, because I know that if I be myself, this podcast will be the podcast it's supposed to be, because it will unlock the flow of myself, which will unlock the flow of the guest. But if I try and be something else, it's going to turn robotic. It's going to turn, you know, it's going to become a 70% podcast, which is good, but it's not. There's many good podcasts, but I don't want to be a good podcast. I want to be that podcast.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, this is special. So I think for me, it's just been that journey and just trying to grow every week, give myself more permission and not be too hard on myself and just, learn. But mainly it's just getting the reps in and giving yourself permission to just be free, really.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely resonate with sort of like you'll re-listen to it and there's parts that no one will notice except yourself. And it's just like you just get kind of a little annoyed at yourself. You're like, that that wasn't really what you wanted to say or what was really there. You were sort of trying to.
Yeah.
I think there's this great thing from Chris Williamson where it's that people don't always want to hear what you think they want to hear. Like they don't
Wow.
always want you to like agree with them or say what they think you want them to hear, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes they
Oh,
just want to hear what you want to hear. And I was just thinking about that and I was like, I feel like there's so many times people will just say what they think the other person wants to hear from them.
I've been there. That's so true. So true. So true. You're so right. And I think it's so easy to fall into, isn't it? Because this game is about extracting the best out of your guests, making them feel comfortable. So we're trying to do so much that we basically put success out of the equation because we're like putting the thing which is going to be success, which is just natural flow like we're having now. We're putting that on the altar of trying to make it a great podcast. And I
Yeah.
think for me, the hardest thing as well, and I'm not sure if you feel the same, but I can be a bit of a perfectionist. I can be someone who
Yeah.
likes so that critical voice afterwards, like, no way, how did I miss that thought from the question? Or like, I could have asked that, or I didn't say that. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But it's like, man, you got to give yourself a lot of grace, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. The other cool thing is that I just thought of is that you can have one guest on multiple times and
Mm,
ask some of those questions that you weren't able to or forgot to ask because you didn't have the context of really getting to know them from the first podcast.
yeah, that's true. That's true as well. Yeah, yeah, you're right there because I felt that sometimes, especially when you have a great guest. And for me, I really like going through the story. Now, let's go back from the origin. Let's work our way through to now. But hang on a minute, like, it's going to be difficult to get those into 45-minute podcast, hour podcast. So until I get to Joe Rogan, Joe Rogan style, I'm going to have to become comfortable with maybe not getting everything in one podcast, you know? So
Yeah.
you're right there.
Um, what are some of the dream guests that you would want on your podcast if they couldn't say no?
That's a good question. So for me, I really, really like people with, who have a really deep story. So I've always been interested in people's stories. Why have they become the person they are? Why have they made the decisions they had? What did they go through? So I just anyone honestly with really deep who are deep thinkers, who have pioneered a new way of thought and have a great story. I really, really find fascinating. So for me, people like Naval would be a fascinating podcast guest. I've always, to be honest, and I've always wanted Andrew Tate on the podcast. I think I just wanted to have a conversation with him. I think the way the guy speaks, regardless of if you agree with him or not, the guy's um, thoughts and worldview and ability to communicate ideas is just insane. And I have a few questions that no one else asked him, and it's mainly around the idea of faith and religion. That I'm like, man, I want to ask this. So he's there. I don't know if you've seen George Janko.
I've heard of him, but have not really dived into him too
He's a
much.
cool guy, really cool. So he was part of the Logan Paul team, and he kind of went off and done his own thing. He's a great guy. He's got really just a well, I don't know him. He's clearly had that much of an impact on me. Where I'm saying he's a great guy. He's a great guy, man. We've hung out so
known
much.
known each other for years.
All my homeboys. We get coffee every morning. It's just me and the coffee looking at the screen. So he'd be great as well. But I think I'm still they'd probably be like the top three for now. But yeah, I'm definitely wanting to explore, the business space, kind of the philosophy, free thinking space, and kind of the health space too. Of especially as I've gone through what I said I went through, like you really start
Yep.
thinking a lot more about okay, how do our bodies work? What are what are we not doing that's so important for our health? What are the lies we believe? Like I'm really fascinated about that. So yeah, it'll be cool to see where it evolves.
Yeah. And it's amazing just the kind of people that you can get on or just how the amount of people that there are in the world that have interesting stories that you can learn from. It's really
Mm.
can sort of be taken aback by just the because even because everyone has a unique story. I think it's Theo Vaughn will do these podcasts with normal people like a janitor or something, and people love those podcasts.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that would be the goal, which is when you start in a podcast, of course, you need guests that are known so that it kind of can grow and people can, you can share audiences. But for me, like, it's never just the motive. It's not just to get the biggest guests on. Like, if you have a story, I don't care who you are. Like, I want to hear from you.
Yeah, and
So
then
when
you
you,
get to share that story with other people.
yeah, exactly. So it'd be cool to get to that place where you're not really thinking about how does this grow, how does this get more listeners. You've already got that audience base, and those people trust you. They're like, well, whoever Aidan brings on, I might not know them, but because I trust Aidan, I like Christian, I like his style, I like his guests, will tune in, and that way you can bring on cool guests, right? From the janitor to the gardener to this entrepreneur to your mom to
Yeah,
whoever wants to be on.
yeah.
How about
Um,
you? I'm curious, real quick. Dream guests.
uh, Definitely Naval. Um, Probably some athletes because I just
Mm.
think that it's interesting. Like Messi, that's not really so crazy. This one kid that plays for Spain, who's 16, plays for the national
Oh,
team.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
What's his name again?
Lamine Yamal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's a newer one, but I
That's
want to
cool.
like what's going on in the mind of this kid that's playing at this level, or I guess he's
I know.
17 now. Yeah,
Yeah, he scored the absolute cracker in the semi-finals, didn't he?
yeah,
And he beat England in the final.
yeah. Controversial one, I guess, but I really admire Jordan Peterson, so I
Mm.
enjoy his talks and
Yeah, I
his
agree. Me too.
yeah, yeah. I don't feel that like he has any malicious intent. I think he's really trying to figure out the truth, and
Mm,
everyone makes mistakes in that. I think he tries to be very honest, and
mm.
I just appreciate that. And I think it's easy to judge from the outside when you're not the one that's sort of in the arena trying to figure this stuff out, and you're like, "Ha, made a mistake there." But I just think I have a lot of admiration for people trying to tell their truth and figure it out.
That's great, man. No, that's really great. And that's really wise. You don't hear too many people's narratives like that. So that's really wise. I really like that, man. And it's not easy, is it? Because like in his case, obviously commenting on the conflict in the Middle
Yeah,
East. It's like, man, this is so politicized, right? Like this is very emotional, like very touchy. So to even get in this arena is so difficult because whatever you say is going to come under a lot of fire by someone,
yep,
especially if you know you're trying your best to really share insights, get guests on, unpack the truth, especially when it's combating maybe such a big political narrative.
yeah.
Man, it's not
Politics
easy. It's
is
not easy. It's not easy at all. So, man, we got to
politics
give
is
ourselves,
just tough.
we got to give people some grace. We've got to be
Yeah,
able to, be able to look at what the person said and interact with what they've said without demonizing, canceling, or judging the person.
yeah. I think one thing that I do not do with Jordan Peterson is take his tweets and say like that defines who he is. I'll listen to his long form stuff and
Yeah.
take that as who he is and what he stands for. And I really enjoy his long form stuff. So, but I know
Mm.
there's probably not much controversy about his long form stuff. It's more about his like short tweets.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It'd be crazy, but yeah, you're right. I don't. Some of these guys as well, like they're doing podcasts and they're doing like multiple a week. Sometimes
Hmm.
I even wonder how these guys are keeping up, like doing such quality podcasts, so informed, so educated, so equipped.
Yeah,
I'm like, man, how do we
yeah,
get there?
yeah.
It's crazy.
Maybe when we have him on, we can ask.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Um, what are Well, I guess you've sort of covered this, but what would you say your plans and next steps as a creator are?
Hmm. So I'd probably say there's two things. So the first one is obviously the podcast, which is I'm focused on mainly growing the podcast, um, via YouTube, and then I've got obviously Instagram, TikTok, and Shorts. So it'll be mainly growing the podcast, getting more defined on the podcast's mission, what's the unique positioning of the podcast. I've started just to get the ball rolling, but we'll start to refine. We'll start to kind of upgrade in ways we can. So I'm using the personal brand mainly just to grow the podcast and keep that growing. On the other hand, as a creator, I've still got a few things in the works. If I want to bring email marketing as a service into my creator business, probably won't, to be honest. I'd probably get to the point where eventually what I'm doing is we'll see how the data looks, but I'm building out this new offer. So if the research is there and it feels like it's something I want to pursue, maybe I'll start positioning on top of promoting the podcast, start pushing content towards that offer, maybe get my email list up and running again, to kind of start writing some more longer form content, start nurturing those prospects to potential clients. But I think even if that doesn't work out, what my hope is eventually would be to grow the podcast. And then off the back of it, I'd really like to launch something off of the podcast, like some kind of digital product or a community or something, something really meaningful, kind of that, what's that, like, is it Naval who says, find the problem you want to see in the world, solve the problem you want to see in the world, or something like that. Was that Naval? Was that Danko?
I'm
I
not
think
sure.
Danko's talked about that a bit more. It's like, find that thing that you want to see solved.
Yep.
So I think it'd be more when the podcast does come to that place that the product is not just a cash grab, for monetization.
It's an
Of course,
impact product.
impact product, but of course, it's nice to make money. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. As we come to the end, if you could only have the audience take away one thing after listening, what would that be?
It's a really good question. So I would say go on a journey. I mean, how do I put this apart from go on a journey to find if God is real? I know that sounds very big and crazy, but it's so true. It's like outside of what we're doing right now, making money, developing our lives, building a family, getting old. What is this all onto, right? We're all going to die one day. What's going to happen after that? I want to make sure I get that one right, because that seems kind of important. And why are we here? Who's made us? What's the point? What is the high call? What is the meaning of life? Like, because eventually all of this is going to go. I'm not going to have my Lambo and my degrees and all the money in the bank. So for me, that is the big one. What is it that you believe about God, and go on a journey? And I found that through my own experience, through a lot of travel and research, scientific and historical reliability of ancient texts, of the Bible, some of the events of Christianity, as well as my own experience. I've come to find that being a follower of Jesus changed my life, and it's shaped my worldview. It shaped how I live. It shaped my future, and I know that higher calling has, for me, obviously, if people don't agree, that's totally okay. But in my eyes, I found that higher calling. I found what success really looks like, what it means to be human, and what this is all on to. So I would say that, because
I love that.
regardless of what conclusion you come to, it would be a shame, wouldn't it? Imagine get to the end of your life and got the cash, got the meaning, got the job, the family and stuff, but what's after that? Is that really it? Is that really all there is? Is there nothing else? So I'd say that's a really important journey to go on.
I love that. I think that is an amazing way to end off this podcast. So thank you for coming on, Aidan.
Christian, it's been an absolute pleasure. Keep smashing it, man.
Thank you.